Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another PulseZ event. Today, we are here with Georgios Karagiorgos, and we are going to discuss a bit more about the topic of over-tourism and how it's affecting communities all across Europe. So, Georgios, first of all, if you could tell us a bit about yourself first, I think it would be best.
Dragos, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on this side of the microphone. As you mentioned, Georgios Karagiorgos. I come from Greece. I'm a journalist and media researcher. I work at the European Youth Press as a journalist, and I'm part of the editorial team of PulseZ platform. And as for the media researching part, I'm working on the case collision against slaps in Europe focal point of Greece at the Peace Journalism Lab in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And how did you get into the topic of over-tourism? How did you decide to write a press piece on this matter specifically?
So, as Greek, I wouldn't say that the last years was something that was so intense, but especially the last 2 summers, over tourism becomes not that of a phenomenon like it is, for example, in Italy or Spain, but we spot like the patterns of something that it will eventually come. It will be like a part of the everyday life, especially during summer or late spring. For now, in Greece, the phenomenon of over-tourism is mainly focused on some islands, for example, Santorini. But it becomes like increasingly intense in Athens too. Watching all the developments and the struggle of Spain political scene to find a way to deal with it, or in Italy, I was thinking, okay, let's see what's the condition exactly in Athens too. So I think that Athens inevitably will become a hotspot of over tourism, and I was trying to, feel the pulse of it right now, because, as I mentioned, it's not something that it is actually happening at this mass extent of other Mediterranean cities, but it's here, and it comes like to stay in a more permanent way.
Would you say there are any tangible impacts of over-tourism you've already seen in your community?
So in Thessaloniki, that I'm currently living, I wouldn't say that this is a big deal. Thessaloniki for now deals with tourism pretty good, I would say. But in Athens, and I have lived there for a while, I would say there are some inevitabilities, especially the cost of living, as also the cultural decrease of this originality that goes with cities. Uh, what I want to say is that, for example, during late 19th century, or at the very first years of 20th, the cities was something that was at the same time something evil. For many people, it was something that it will like remove the identities and the cultural footprint of the nations. But at the same time, cities became the very heart of what nations used to be. I'm thinking now that we are living a transformation, but not in a good way, of this perception of this idea. Because when tourism comes and becomes like the reality of these cities, it comes and goes. It's not something that stays there to produce something, to get in touch with the local community. I mean, the only thing is that this phenomenon, and it's not has to do like with the individuals, but as a phenomenon, it sucks the blood, the cultural blood of the communities, and goes without meaningfully interacting. But beyond this, it also has to do like with the locals, because the locals cannot afford to pay the rent, for example. They see their neighborhoods like to be like a boiling thing, like it's boiling for some time. Everything goes up, and after a while, it goes away. I mean, it's not something that you can be happy with to live in a situation like this.
Also, to some extent, I'd say it also leads to the commodification of culture, where we're seeing basically the whole essence and the whole cultural nature of a certain country be reduced only to stereotypes in order to fit the expectations of the tourists that are visiting.
Exactly. I mean, everything, the cities are becoming like a Luna Park. They want to live at a very stereotypical heterotopia. Allow me to use this term for their like imaginary how they visualize like this thing. I mean, even when I wrote this article on PulseZ, I was thinking, this I mentioned to the very first lines, the Grand Tour of these north raised noblemen that came to the south for their personal adventure and to collect and to extract, like develop their social capital. It's the same. It's crazy, but back then it was just only for the noble, because the rest of the people, I mean, they couldn't afford like to go from the one town to another. But right now, this is something that is so extent, like from social classes, but eventually it doesn't matter, because there are the very same people that most of them at least, to their cities, if we're talking about like, for example, let's break it down. um a Spanish man comes with his family or whatever, like to Athens, and he lives like in Barcelona. But also when a Greek will go to Barcelona, they will bring himself to the same situation that he brought like the neighborhood or the ex, like I don't know who, to Athens. I mean, we are living we're experiencing the tourism, I think, with the wrong way nowadays.
And I think also something that we've been seeing is, I mean, as you said, the higher social strata are living their fantasies and
Mm-hmm.
in destinations. They are turning them into more or less theme parks or their playgrounds. And it's always one of the narratives that we keep hearing about these very trendy tourist destinations is how cheap a place is, how affordable it is, what good food you can get for 10 euros, let's say. But we are never looking at the fact that the local community, which is 80%, 90% of the population in bigger cities, or maybe it's now dwindling down to 20,
Mm-hmm.
30% of the population of a touristic destination, the local population ends up suffering. They cannot really afford to rent their places anymore because every piece of housing is turning into accommodation for tourists. They cannot afford to go out anymore and to enjoy their time in a restaurant or in a cafe, because obviously the cafes and the restaurants and the service business has to adapt to this new demand from the side of the tourists, and also to their price levels and to their willingness to spend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we end up turning the communities away from their inhabitants and turning them towards tourists in the end.
Exactly, because what everyone wants in the end of the day is like the cultural authenticity. But when this becomes a byproduct of the market of tourism, I mean, this thing automatically is flattened. I mean, as I mentioned to you, Athens has joined the club, even if it's like to now in baby steps of over tourism. But neighborhoods formerly known like for rebelliousness or decline of the state, or the the right path, now host like digital nomads and concept Airbnbs. And I mean, for students, for example, rents rise high, and they cannot even afford to like support their studies. And this is not something that can go like without social policy. Um, I mean, the long-term residents now withdraw, and the very soul of the system, I think, becomes like how to say it, maybe even a commodity. And when I was discussing this with some people for the creation of the article, everybody described it under terms of how you describe like the pain, um, in the same extent, with the same rhetoric, but this has like this extension to the architecture of the public landscape. I mean, the value of it remains, but the life behind the facades like disappear, and the very city becomes like almost a theatrical set built for someone else's gaze. Definitely. I mean, I don't know. I think that the conflict, because we are talking about conflict, and the thing is that this conflict isn't becoming like with equal terms. It's becoming with the one that has like the capital to be there, and the one that is forced to live without having the ability to move elsewhere. I mean, this very conflict is not about like tourist versus local, but like rights versus model, the model of tourism. And I mean, people don't reject visitors themselves, even with this phenomenon in I can recall like in Barcelona, where locals sprayed with water pistols the the tourists. They didn't reject them. They rejected the policy that incentives, how to say it, speculative profit, sorry, at the expense of their belonging. And the only way I can see to mm, make this, how to say, like worth to living is a construction of a new social contract of hospitality. We don't have like to reject tourism. I mean, it's something that it's here, like refreshes the economy, gives money to people. Many people, especially in Greece, in Italy, in Spain, lives from tourism. But I mean, we cannot have like this freedom in quote marks at the market of tourism, because it's happening like on the back of the people that are living their everyday lives where tourists are coming. And yeah, I mean, tourism eventually has to be a relationship, not a product, like protected by regulations and community voice, and not led like platforms. I mean, everybody knows to which platform I'm referring, to set the scenery and the terms of our everyday life. Yeah.
I think what we're seeing to some extent in the past decades is basically the image of a self-consuming snake. Because on
Mm-hmm.
one hand, you have economies which become heavily reliant on tourism, which incentivizes the political environment to start investing more and more in infrastructure dedicated to tourism. So obviously extensions of airports, better road infrastructure in touristic areas, and so on. But there's a very well-known principle in urban design, which basically can be summarized to the phrase, if you build it, they will come. The same thing happens with touristic infrastructure. After all, you start seeing that your national revenue keeps relying more and more on tourism. So you
Mm-hmm.
end up developing the infrastructure more and more. The tourists become prioritized over the local population. And you end up with this sort of situation as we're seeing in Barcelona and in Ibiza lately as well, where the local population becomes more and more hostile to tourists, not necessarily because it's the tourists' fault for anything, but it's the government's lack of attitude. It's the government's lack of regulation, protecting them against predatory practices from the side of the market. And the tourist just ends up as being the symbol of the consumer, of the one who actually benefits from policy and not the citizen. So
Yeah, I mean, it's totally a political phenomenon. It's a matter of policy, not just something that is happening and no one can like reduce it or regulate it. And without the thinking of it at at a cultural level or political level, the Mediterranean specifically will become like a consumable illusion. I mean, everyone would like to come to Athens and live like the golden age of Pericles, visit the Parthenon or whatever, or me to go as a tourist to southern Italy, or I don't know, to the northern part and live, this dolce far niente thing and visit I don't know, the Florence or whatever. But this happens at invisible cost for the tourist. Um, I was in Florence back in late June, but not exactly as a tourist. In this sterile, type of it, because I was there like for summer school, and we were like in Piazza della Repubblica, and I was like so overstimulated by the people around me. I mean, the humidity didn't help me either. But and I was like, "How are you living here?" I, really, I know that this thing brings money, but what's happening to the city? And this isn't something that comes and goes. I mean, especially for Florence, it's something that is like 24/7 for the whole year. And this is it. It's never just about the holidays. Like, it's a political project. Decisions about who gets to live where, who profits from the city, who occupies the public square, like with cameras versus who is pushed out of it. If I was born like in Florence, I would like to live there, not to be forced to live to the countryside. That I imagine it's beautiful, but it must be a choice of me to decide if I am going to stay like in the city of or the countryside, and not like a byproduct of a political project to like have the tourists in in the historical cities and leave the locals out. And we are talking about like a class between two political visions of the cities. On one side, as you mentioned also, is the city as a marketplace, a space that can be monetized, packaged, consumed, and not be something that you can relate and how like a dialectical relationship. And on the other side, there's the city as a commons, a space where citizenship, history, and social life like can be unfolded, because everyone that comes from the second, but we don't realize that when we are becoming how to say when we are trying to socialize ourselves in this form, uh, eventually we advocate for the first one. Yeah.
What I'd say is also quite interesting to see about how we relate to tourism
Hmm.
in this modern atmosphere would be the apparition of this new sort of tourist, the
Hmm.
self-conscious tourist, let's call it, the one who is not like other tourists, the one who respects the culture, the one who only buys from local stores and so on. But once again, it's more or less a different manifestation of the exact same phenomenon.
That's
It
true.
doesn't really matter as long as you're still supporting the exact same exploitative model that you see within regular tourist destinations, because obviously the accommodations are part of the exact same scheme and they do the exactly same amount of damage that regular hotel would do, let's say. Then also buying things at a significantly higher price than the markets and raising the prices for the local population, once again, is supporting is supporting the same model.
Hmm.
I think to some extent people already feel the need to wash their hands and clean their deeds to some extent. And through this mantra that I'm not like the other tourists, I know how to respect the culture, I know how to be a good tourist, and yet materially they engage in the exact same practices as all of the other tourists, but just in a more polished form or in a more even gentrified to some extent form, then I think that we are not really moving in any way towards finding a solution to this issue.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I was thinking this when I was talking to you like about the Florence. I was feeling guilty to be there and be part of the problem, even if I was like respecting the culture, speaking Italian to like to the locals, knowing about the history of the city. But I mean, you cannot exclude yourself from a phenomenon. And one like the very policy that is, I mean, firstly outdated. I mean, it's outdated. And like the conclusion is to be deregulation, the regulation, short-term rentals, speculative licensing for hotels, public marketing campaigns. I mean, the city becomes a brand, and like I want to wear it, like have the badge on me. Um, it's a very specific hierarchy, priorities, and the firstly is the investor, after is the visitor, and the residence comes like last. It's a politically economy, I would say, of displacement in a way. And the irony, I think, is that governments often frame these choices as development, as if like the GDP growth can fix a disappearing community or whatever. And I mean, this is something that we notice in Greece, for example. We monopolized the national economy on tourism. It's inevitably the communities will come last because I mean, no one cares. Even some voices from the communities are telling something. Let's go with it. I mean, we will find a way. But yeah, where's the pulse of the city? I mean, the aesthetic of the city becomes you know uh, uh, becomes transformed. I mean, it's transformed from the very political decisions. Graffiti, for example, because you mentioned the gentrification, was claimed like for Instagram, a square designed not for children, but for for a cafe seating or whatever. Stop selling €5 magnets instead of vegetables. I don't know. I the policy is hidden in the absence. It is not what is built, not necessarily to turn around a little bit your statement before, but who is missing? And cities are also like contending with a new kind of tourism. That this has to do like with the digital version of it and how algorithms also uh, promote something and reject something other. And suddenly decisions about neighborhood futures are made in Silicon Valley rather than city councils and their campaigns.
We are seeing to some extent, now that you mentioned the algorithms, we are
Hmm.
seeing a trendification, let's call it,
Hmm.
of tourism, because obviously destinations can be presented in a much easier way now than they could have been 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's significantly easier for a place which was previously unknown to suddenly be put on the radar as one of Europe's top tourist destinations. And I'll give you a very concrete example, and then I think we'll move on to the most obvious one. For me, what was very shocking to hear was 2 years ago, someone recommended to me to visit Xamil in the south of Albania,
Mm.
marketed as being very beautiful, nice sandy beaches, blue water, and so on. I had never heard of Xamil up until that point, and after I've heard about it, all I kept seeing was Xamil and people promoting Xamil as a destination and so on. But obviously, if it's such a small village, if it's such a small place, it cannot have the proper infrastructure to handle this huge influx of tourists. And yet, the digital platforms that serve so many communities worldwide and so many clients worldwide, these platforms do have the infrastructure to send people that way, but the communities in the real life cannot handle them in any way. And what I think would be a very, very good example in this regard, also coming back to what you said a bit earlier, Santorini.
Exactly.
Santorini is presented more or less as being a jewel which is untouched, which is very culturally pure to some extent. But to what extent can you still consider it to be that when the local culture has basically perished and it is fully replaced now with something to satisfy tourist needs? Because people, when they visit a touristic destination, they will visit it also for the culture. And I think right now, in these days, culture tends to be above other factors which would motivate you to visit. But then, how can you still properly enjoy that culture if you contribute to its disappearance?
No, no, no. Especially with these communities, ultimately the tourists consume and relate with other tourists rather than the local element. Especially for Santorini, during summer, due to some large cruise ships that arrived at once into the island, there was an announcement from the municipality that said, please, the locals, stay home in order to serve like the normalite of of the flow from the tourists, and like what. Are you serious? I mean, should the locals be quarantined for the existing? Well, I'm not sure about existing anymore. Like, for the presence of the tourists themselves in Santorini with these narrow streets, and how many people can be afford like to live in in a rock in the middle of the Aegean? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Um, and it has to be regulated. This is the end of the story. I mean, everything else is like theoretical conversation about the impact and just to criticize the politics so far, but also the very perception of what is like a well and brings welfare to the local community. But it's like, okay, we have seen this. Let's turn into like something that is viable. It's something that I'm not sure if it is 100% accurate, but I was reading, this quotes of famous, personalities, and it was one from Otto von Bismarck that was saying, "You don't have to learn from your own mistakes." Because other people make mistakes too. You don't have to be idiot like to uh, get yourself through this hell in order to end up like to a good decision. And we have seen the results. We know what's coming. I mean, we still have time. We're not, why we're following a model that uh, it's not effective. It has failed to serve the communities.
And what plausible solutions would you see, let's say, on a short term, on a medium term, and on a long term, in order to curb over tourism, in order to preserve the authenticity of local culture and so on?
Mm-hmm.
Because we kept discussing about its effects, but I think it's also important to see that there is quite a clear way out.
Definitely, definitely. First of all, there should be some cookies to given like to the people in order to bring them back to their neighborhoods. I mean, to rethink the neighborhood as lands of the city to create culture. And by saying culture, I don't think that every neighborhood will have like three musicians, four painters, one philosopher. I mean, it's not something like that. Like an idealistic how to say, like perception of every neighborhood, like this like Montmartre in Belle Epoque. That this is even something that comes like in an imaginary touristic version of what Montmartre is like. Um, I'm thinking that we need an institutional framework, first of all, to limit short-term rental with a very clear distinction between tourists and permanent residences. And this also goes for the digital nomads. At the same time, social criteria in urban planning and hotel licensing to avoid overcrowding visitors in historic or residential centers. I mean, in the Monastiraki in Greece, it's I mean, like hell. You cannot visit it and be calm. It's so overcrowded. The stimulus are coming from everywhere, like from shops trying to sell something, from tourists shouting to each other. Like it's like Babylon. I don't know. Um, and beyond this, I think also that investment in affordable tourist infrastructure that does not push visitors toward unregulated platforms is something that is essential to have like this relation-based touristical perception of what tourism is eventually. And I would say also with respect to the nature or to the landscape, yeah, of the cities. Um, yeah, I mean, it's all, and to conclude with this, with a more like political dimension of it, I think that participatory decisions making process, to incorporate the testimonies and needs of local communities is something needed. But at the same time, awareness campaigns not only for tourists but also like for the municipal authorities and hospitality businesses on the concept of mutual understanding and sustainability is something that is the core of what has to be promoted. I mean, yeah, I mean the tourism crisis is not just to question like of the quantity. It's primarily a question of policy quality, and all these yeah must be parts elements of how this policy will be eventually, and I hope so, shaped.
Do you also see some models of policy which would be worth emulating? So some real life examples that you've seen in communities which were previously affected by over tourism, and you would say that they had some good results in helping stop this phenomenon or in preserving the culture of a certain community?
I'm not so sure. And if there's something specifically like that became like effective, I think it's so over specialized that cannot be adopted in general. But also these things are super fragmented, short policies about a very specific geographical part, for example, like a certain village that is under UNESCO, for example. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that we have seen till now a very good, try to rethink tourism.
So we should look more into localized models and to see how every solution fits its local context after all.
Yeah, I think in the end of the day, this is the core of the argument of the mutual understanding and sustainability.
And how would you say that tourism will look in the future if we keep on the same path, first of all,
Hmm.
if we don't really change anything, or if we try and strive for this positive change and implement a model of sustainable tourism? Because we're not going to stop tourism as a phenomenon. Mobility is something that's been happening for thousands of years. And yet, we still need to find solutions in order to make sure that communities are not affected and essentially, as you've said, have their blood sucked
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
this phenomenon. So, how would you see these two alternative realities differ from one another?
You know, my first degree was in history, and the when you ask like a historian this big what if that happens, everyone is like, no, no, no. I mean, history does not look like that. Can work like this. But when it comes to the future, you can foresight, for example. The thing that is that firstly, no one did it like 15 years ago. They adopted this model. And how, I mean, if we have to do it like this now, I believe that results will be terrifying, especially with the climate collapse. I mean, Mediterranean is one of the geographical areas that will be most affected in Europe. And the last thing that can be added like to this equation is over tourism as people comes and goes, and increasing the carbon emissions and the garbages. Um, yeah, I don't think this is viable, especially in the future. Um, I think though that a tourism that will have like an alternative, uh, d- let's say, um, version of it right now, maybe could help to the environmental sustainability, rethink itself as someone who is participating to the communities. But I don't see how we are close to this one. Yeah, I mean, and this is something that's maybe it's mainly part of the Mediterranean, but also like a Paris is experiencing massive amounts of tourists, and this eventually will go like a northern and northern because of the climate collapse. And I don't think that no, I think that none is ready right now to you know to deal with something like that.
And to make sure, after all, that these consequences don't spread further and further into the future. So it's more or less the best time to act. But I
Yeah, I
think
mean, totally. We are living just know at so many levels, but also about like a human mobility to an era that is transitional. We have still time. We have something to do about it. We have to like demand for political will or press push for it. But yeah, I mean, nothing is already done. Nothing will come like by its own. It's on like the hands of the people, and as long as we're we're okay, we're letting ourselves be in that position. Um, yeah, I mean, nothing good will come.
yet I think we have a very good model of participatory mobility, let's call
Mm-hmm.
it, one which actually helps develop communities right in the EU. And I would say the European Solidarity Corps is a
Mm-hmm.
perfect example of how you can experience a different culture and yet contribute to that culture and community's well-being.
Exactly.
Not only that, you get to immerse yourself in that specific community. You also get the opportunity to learn the language because it's quite a longer term project compared to just a short 1 week visit to a touristic destination. But
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
still something that brings so much more added value also to the community and also to you, the person who is experiencing it. And I think it would be interesting to explore in the future what other models of tourism and of cultural experience we can develop where the people who are visiting can also experience the culture but also contribute to its development or to its preservation.
I think that the contrast of this, and I'm very in favor of these initiatives, are the digital nomads, as I mentioned before, because the what you mentioned has to do like with volunteering, engage themselves like with the community, share the graal of the culture of its country and village. But at the same time, this has not to do with the market. It's not something that is a consumable product. We are coming back to the very principle of what is a relation and what is a product. And in contrast to all this, you have like the digital nomads, for example, that a hybrid of someone who is here to work but remotely, but at the same time is also a tourist. And this brings like this cultural problem that this type of people of types, to not specify like to the people themselves, do not promote multicultural existence. And multicultural existence is like the core of the European spirit. They replace the local with an internationalized post-liberal culture of productivity where the local community is unable to assimilate. And to be honest, it does not even need to, but they don't engage with it, resulting in it being reduced from a subject to this
Because you
facade,
keep
like a
yourself in a
function in
bubble
the
after all.
background. Sorry?
You keep yourself in a bubble. This is what happens. I
Yeah,
mean, you're
exactly.
still stuck in your own work environment, and then at the end of the day, you get to experience the beautiful streets of Lisbon, let's say. But you do not experience the working conditions of Lisbon. You do not experience the living conditions of Lisbon. You do not
I,
experience any of the hardship, and you do not experience any of the community because obviously, since your work is basically only in the digital environment, you have no need to learn the language. You have no need to learn cultural sensibilities or cultural nuances and so on. So you just end up as being constantly foreign to the place where you are residing.
exactly. I mean, I would say it like better. It's this concept that comes also every time when I'm discussing these things to my mind, and I think I mentioned again this concept of heterotopia of Go. But the question that comes after is who's living in it? Who has the power to redefine the public sphere, the public landscape? Is the tourist that lives like to the original version of it, or the local? Because in most times, I think that the locals find themselves in the jail of the this jail of the phenomenon. Yeah, trapped in it. So who follows the rules of this?
And the local just ends up at the bottom of the food chain to some extent
Yeah,
because they are the ones creating the culture, and yet if their culture is not profitable, their culture is adapted to the needs of the market. And I think this is one of the largest shames we are guilty of with our modern approach to culture. This idea that
definitely. I mean,
we need to
definitely.
commodify it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, their locals are the the smallest fish. I mean, they are coming last to the food chain. And I think probably I mentioned also this too before. But first is the investor, then is the visitor slash like tourist or whatever, and then is the local. And I mean, tourism or over tourism will not affect even if we are talking about the neighborhoods, it will not affect the rich neighborhoods. They will affect the city center that people of middle class used to live, and the middle class goes where?
And maybe as a final question,
Mm-hmm.
if you could by absurd send a message to all tourists of this world, something,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be in order to make them more aware of their impact and the impact of their actions on local communities?
Mm. Try not to be part of something that you know uh, scratch the culture. Try to share it with the community. Try to be part of it. Do not visit directly like the big hotspots. See the culture, visit it, respect it. It's that simple, I think.
Thank you so much, Yorgos, for this dialogue. I think it was very insightful and looking forward to seeing you for the next one.
Thank you, Dragos. I was more than happy to be here with you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope people will find it, useful, and rethink their, involvement in in tourism. Also, thank you.
And thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today and looking forward to seeing you at the next PulseZ Online event.